So, Alex, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, colleagues, good afternoon, good morning to all the colleagues online and the ones that will be joining us for this side event. On behalf of the UN Geospatial Network, all the 37 agencies across the UN system, and of course also as part of the 11th session of the UN-GGIM, it's great to have this opportunity. I think I'd like to have informal word before I do a very quick presentation, just to thank all the colleagues that have been working tirelessly in their own organizations promoting geospatial. These have been times of difficulty, times of humanitarian crises with all these with these health crises that has impacted on all of us. But I think the resilience that has been demonstrated across the UN system in reacting to the crisis, I think it's a good demonstration of capacity. There will be here a good opportunity for geospatial because I think as a leveraging technology, enabling technology, geospatial working across the UN system in all the different dimensions and pillars, as demonstrated again, its capacity to help humanity. On our work today, we will have very distinguished speakers across the board. I'll just go quickly on the strategic take of the UN Geospatial Network after we published the blueprint and some key areas that we have worked and we're going to continue to work. All our work is based on the context of the framework of the UN-GGIM. As you can see, there's the work of the different regional economic commissions and the other three thematic networks, the geospatial science, academic and private sector. It's likely very much that our work in the coming months and coming years, we will continue to strengthen this partnership with the other networks. So, and the network of the system will be partnering with the other thematic networks of the GGIM. I think it's important for us to continue to keep our vision, Geospatial for a Better World, that started with the first World Congress on geospatial, and it's important that we keep our mission to be strengthening the coordination and coherence of across the UN system of geospatial information management. I think in everything we do, we should keep our vision and mission very bold. As well as the objectives that we set up at the very beginning, all the different activities, and I will highlight the support to our mandates, because we have mandates in the different pillars of the system. We have different mandates, either if we work on peace and security, if we work on humanitarian, if we work on development. So as long as we continue to strengthen geospatial to support our mandates and the objectives of the overall UN-GGIM, will be continuing to do our work. In the meantime, I think the strategic objectives of the blueprint have helped us to strengthen, to increase and to promote the different areas of cooperation across the UN system. This is a good demonstration of strength. We are now 37 agencies, funds and programs across the UN system. It's likely that in the coming years we will continue to leverage the growth of the network. And as we move into strengthening the activities, we'll continue to move and grow the number of entities across the UN system work on geospatial. I'd like to very much to thank the work that the previous steering committee of the network in 2019-21 did, as well as the work that at the time the Vice Chair Laura and also part of the leadership of the network did and contributed. I'd like to highlight this point. We have renewed our mandate. Here, I'd like to strengthen and to leverage the welcoming message to Einar Piogo from UNITAR, Director of UNITAR, to become Vice Chair of the network. Together with Toby Weeks, we will continue to give our service and our mission to the objectives of the network, as well, of course, as welcome the new steering group that was elected in the plenary of the meeting that we had in July. We continue to report to the UN-GGIM framework after all, still in the month of August, we will be reporting our activities for the UN-GGIM plenary. But basically, with the light architecture, as you can see, we are able to grow in terms of impact of what we can do. Let me highlight some key ideas about this impact. If we can synthesize the strategy and priorities for the coming years, we need to continue to rely on our blueprint. We have put forward the strategic blueprint as our strategy guidance document. So anytime each one of our entities wants to go back, we should go back to this strategy document. And it is clear from that strategy document that we are highlighting three fundamental pillar areas for the coming future of geospatial. One is governance. And here it's clear that the governance, as we can leverage the governance of geospatial across the UN system, the better. There will be several different opportunities for doing that. Giving examples, what we have just done in terms of bringing together the geospatial job profiles is a good example of strengthening governance and how we can strengthen governance in the future. But the project we have for the Geospatial Network Hub is another example of how we can strengthen governance across the network. So the second one is technology. The more we can leverage geospatial technology across the UN system, the better. And here I would immediately also call again the work that UNITAR is doing on the use of satellite imagery that brings together, but also the work on land cover and the standardization of land cover that FAO is doing, or the work on use of geospatial for logistics that WFP continues to do and support the humanitarian work. So we could also mention the work that the technology needed for the health system that the WHO is producing. So we have many different strands of work on technology, and we continue to enforce technology as one of our strategic pathways. And finally, last but not the least, the people. So I think here we have a major agenda to put forward. Even yesterday, I was in this side event of the academic network. We should partner with a number of other constituencies in order that capacity building and outreach can become a serious business for us for the UN Geospatial Network, and we can use capacity building training as fundamental cornerstones of our activity. Again, here we are not we're starting from the shoulders of giants. We have UNITA work, we have OLA work, we have the work of the UN Economic Commissions from ECLAC to ESCAP, and ECA. So we basically by strengthening this capacity building work in the coming years, it's critical and fundamental. So again, this map, this single page provides our strategic pathways for the coming future in terms of blueprint, governance, technology, and people. Let me just go very rapidly now on some fundamental landmarks that we have done in the past, and we will continue to further these now down the line in the coming months. The blueprint, as I said, is our reference strategy document. The landscape, which we have turned into an electronic system that is going to be soon available in our website, the UN Geospatial Network website, and which provides access to activities, resources, and all the different focal points of the UN Geospatial Network. But we have also put forward, and here I thank OICT and the Secretariat for the capacity to move forward with our network website. This should become a hub. Soon we should be having here as a big geospatial hub coming from the network, the UN Geospatial Network website, but immediately the capacity to have this translated in the official languages of the UN and to made available through this website, our work is a key fundamental landmark. And here again, the continuation of the link with the Committee of Experts and UN-GGIM, as well as the Secretariat sites, is a fundamental landmark as well. We are going to publish soon the two publications of the Geospatial in Action, with more than 21 demonstration projects in the different areas of the SDGs supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. And also I would like to thank all the entities that have been working on geospatial for humanity, the response to the COVID-19 crisis, not only the prevention, the response, and the recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. It's coming as a very nice set of publications, which also sets the ground for activities that go in these different directions. Let me highlight one landmark work that we have prepared in the last couple of months, but I'm sure across the UN system we have now the capacity to outreach these generic job descriptions on geospatial, and I'm sure that they will be of fundamental importance as well, not only for the UN system, but also for member states as a reference. So I believe that the work done on this categorization and classification of the generic geospatial job description is a very important step that we are working on, and can become a landmark of the UN system, across the UN system, and again of very much use to the member states. We are receiving important feedback from both from member states. We started some consultation, but I think this is work to be done in the coming years to make sure that we reap the benefits of this important tool and this important instrument. The other area where we certainly are going to grow is the partnerships with the fundamental other statistical areas or cornerstones of the system. Geospatial and statistics is one of those fundamental tight twinnings that we have worked in the past with a joint workshop with the CCSA and the statistics community. But I'm sure, and we have with us Erzen and the YCT and the new leadership of the YCT. We have a similar work, or even strengthening this partnership between geospatial and technology across the UN system. And we have other areas such as the geospatial and health as fundamental areas where we need to strengthen the partnerships and to connect the dots to make sure that we move in the right direction. I'm not going to go back again here. Basically, we have to strengthen three fundamental pillars on governance, on technology, and people, and we have to follow the strategic pathways of the blueprint in every activity that we'll be conducting in the coming months and the coming years. It will be to expect too much for you to be listening to me on the detail of each one of the 50 proposed activities that we have. So I'm just slipping through those activities. I prefer to highlight the fact that in 2 years' time we'll have much more geospatial technology available through the network. We'll have much more and strengthened governance at all different levels. And we'll have much more capacity in people, and we have more people in geospatial and more capacity in the people that we have in geospatial across the UN system. These are the different activities spread looking forward for the coming years in these three main pillars, so the governance, the technology, and the people. And we intend to actually complete this program of activities in very much looking forward to make sure that happens. Let me have a final word just to highlight again and to praise the many different experts across the UN system, beyond the UN system, that we'll be presenting today and discussing in this side event. We'll have Toby Wicks from Geospatial in Action on data and sustainable development goals, but we have Kyomsu that will bring together the work done on the mapping for sustainable world. I'd like also to praise and to thank Doug Muchoni from FAO and the colleague from Esri on the global agroecologic zone and the Hand in Hand initiative. We'll have Ravi WHO to present the work that we are preparing and working on geospatial for humanity and the response to the crisis. We have Einar presenting the disaster management capacity building in different countries and the work of UNITA across the UN system that serves the whole UN system, and finally Alvaro Monet from ECLAC, which will demonstrate the strengthening of geospatial management in the Americas with the tremendous impact on region and country basis, and this provides us a fantastic for discussion, which also demonstrates it's more a forum for discussion, and at the same time to try to understand which are the fundamental ways to move forward. And that's all for my side. side. I really thank the Secretariat again and all the colleagues across the 37 nation funds and programs for us to have a very useful discussion today with this side event and the UN-GGIM 11th session. So I'll over to you, Guillaume, or I can give the floor to Toby Wicks.
Yeah, if we can go on to the next slide and go to the Toby Wicks.
Thank you so much, Alex. Guillaume, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Super. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Toby Wicks. I'm a Chief of Data and Analytics at UNICEF headquarters in New York, and I also have the total pleasure and delight of serving the network with Alex and Einar as a vice chair of the network. I'm not going to spend too long today. Alex has already flagged this work, which is Geospatial in Action. And I think Alex didn't use the words, but I would for the blueprint, which really we spoke of as a jumping off point. So perhaps necessary, but not sufficient really to drive the change that we need. And I think the same could very much be said for this work as well. I think it would be a mistake for us to think of this as a report. It's really not about the PDF as a project or as a product. For me, it's really about the process for us to drive a more coherent and a more strategic approach to the use of geospatial within the UN system. So it's really about the direction of travel more than the PDF document. That said, next slide, please, Guillaume. 3 main objectives for this work. I think the first is certainly an ambition, right, for an inventory of activities. And I think when when you see the report, it's clear that it's not an inventory. It's clearly, you know, scratching the surface, really, if we're honest about it, in terms of 21 demonstration projects within the UN system. But that said, it's a very, very good first step in this direction. I think the idea of showcasing the use and application of geospatial information management in the context of the SDGs is important. So we've used the SDGs as really as an organizing framework to show the demonstration projects. And I think for me, again, this is really a knowledge exchange activity. So facilitating awareness and collaboration within GGIM and the UN system. Next slide, please, Guillaume. I think also important for us to see how this dovetails in with the activities of the blueprint. I won't bother reading this out here. You can follow along for yourselves, but I think really important for us to see how these 2 activities really complement each other. Next slide, please, Guillaume. So here we've got 4 slides that really just give you a look and feel for the product. But again, you know, this will certainly be an iterative process. Here we're showing SDGs 2 and 9. Alex already mentioned, I think, FAO and WFP, and you'll see them elaborated within SDG 2. SDG 9, certainly worth mentioning very briefly, work from UN Environment on monitoring mining. Also quite a lot of emphasis given here to ITU and also colleagues at UNICEF for the GIGA project, which is the lofty ambition of connecting every school in the world to the internet. So just a very brief glimpse of the report, which will be available for all to enjoy by the end of GGIM 11. It's currently just going through the final touches in terms of design. I think worth mentioning, more than 50 individuals contributed to this work. And I think probably the most valuable page on the report will be the final page, which includes all of those contributors. So if there's anything in particular that resonates with you in terms of those demonstration projects, then you'll know exactly who to reach out to. So what I, for one, am terribly excited, really, to see how this evolves over time. And as I said right at the beginning, as a vehicle to drive that more coherent and strategic approach to the use of geospatial within the UN system. I think a final word of thanks to Guillaume Lesoeur and the Secretariat, who have been instrumental at helping us get this across the line for now. So maybe with that, Alex, let me pass it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toby. I think you've put the finger where it hurts. So basically, it's to take the blueprint as a vehicle, as a jumping start point for what we do, much more than any signal of publication. And it's a great way to put it very clear, Toby. Thanks for your leadership on these. And I think we can move on now to Kyomsu on mapping for a sustainable world, a book on cryptography and the SDGs. So over to you, James.
So this is Tim Traynor from the president of the International Cartographic Association, and I'll be leading off the conversation today, and then followed by Kyung-Soo. Thank you.
I apologize.
No, that's
no problem.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. Just background, I'm Tim Traynor, president of the International Cartographic Association, spent a career at the U.S. Census Bureau and Geospatial Information, and served as a co-chair of UN-GGIM. Today, we really want to share with you an extraordinary example of collaboration between the United Nations and, in this case, one of the geospatial societies, the International Cartographic Association. This was a work in progress over several years, and it really ended in a productive, tangible result. And I want to just share some of the outcomes of that. We all know with the SDGs that they're based on lots of data, and that data can be complicated, difficult. Some of it's hard to get. Some of it's not in the best form. And when we look at the SDGs, having a 15-year program, we're in year 7. The 2020 round of censuses are clearly a big input to this process. We know that as we look at this data, the goal is to use it in the most efficient and effective way. And that's the key. It's to use it. It's not just to go through the process of collecting it. It's to make use of the data. Next slide, please. There are lots of different ways that one can see that data. We're seeing all kinds of graphics and diagrams and summary tables and all the rest. I think as you explore those offerings, you can see that in some cases, mapping really helps to show that data in meaningful ways. And not just at a national level, not just at a global level, but for those that are working at a local level even, following the guidance of the SDGs, there are many benefits. And so one of the things that we did in the early days of GGIM was to make posters of some of the SDGs to show the value of the mapping. This is a collaboration between the United Nations and the ICA, and there were other participants in this process. The Technical University under Professor Menoyan Kroc, he was the individual who initiated this idea. University of Wisconsin's Cartographic Laboratory, and then of course the UN Geospatial Information section. Next slide, please. So what's the connection now to GGIM? So there are many touch points. If you look at the left, Integrated Geospatial Information Frameworks, the IGIF, that's just making its way into our realm today. If you look at the Global Statistical Geospatial Framework, and also the SDG Geospatial Roadmap. There are many touch points, partnerships, data quality, innovation, capacity, statistical and geospatial integration. Common geography is a real challenge. Enumeration areas, now you're at a very low level of geography. How do you use those data to make the most out of the SDGs and all of the different indicators that are challenging to us? Next slide, please. So this is just a quick layout of the book. We have a book that has been put together, and it is available. It's freely available. We have a section on the SDGs and the data itself. There were many experiences, learning experiences from this exercise. We have map design considerations. Where do you begin? Which map is the best map to use? We have a whole series on maps and diagrams of selections of the best map to use and the best diagram to use given the purpose of the type of data. And then we talk about map use environments. And for example, the Geospatial Network, the UN network, this is an important map use environment. If you think about the United Nations and you think about all the different sectors and parts of the United Nations network, they are a core user of all of these efforts. So that's something that I think is a benefit to everyone. Next slide, please. This is just a simple indication of the thought that went into the layout of the book to ensure that it was as useful as possible. Next slide, please. Here is an example of all the different challenges you have in making decisions as part of the mapping process. What you can't see in this diagram, though, is all the challenges that the folks that were working on the program or product had with working with the data, the difficulties of working with the data. And these are the realities of what we have. So in my summary of my part of this, we have 94 SDG maps, we have 68 schematic maps, 35 SDG diagrams, and then we've got other figures. And what I would say is that this is not a book of all the maps, all the SDGs, but it's an indication of the value of using SDGs as a common theme throughout the book. Now over to Kyung-Soo. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. What are the global challenges that we are facing? Going back to the previous slide, please. Thank you. What are the global challenges that we are facing with? And you can see that the pandemic, such as COVID-19, threat to international peace and security, disaster, economic crisis, climate changes, and so on and so forth. United Nations has the mandate to mitigate the impact from these global challenges, and geovisualization or mapping could play a very important role to address them effectively. Next slide. What is the narrative and what do we want to communicate it? There are 6 steps to plan and design the map, starting to define the goal, to finalize the map design and production. Next slide. There is a global sustainable development goal indicator data provided by the UN Statistics Division. It is critical to determine which indicator we want. Going back, please just going back to the previous slide. We want. So as they can be chosen based on specific indicator data set or by time series. Next slide. Important enumeration unit in SDG mapping, continental, regional, countries, SDG groupings, subregions, intermediary regions, and so on. Next slide. It is necessary to consider how to transform and analyze the data suitable for the narrative and messages. Next slide. In order to support novice cartographers, the publication includes the map design workflow to assist them in selecting the most appropriate map type and methodologies. Next slide. In preparing the SDG separators, it was a good opportunity to critically thinking about how to provide a better storytelling through the maps. Next slide. This is an example of promoting corporate map based on sub-regional level data set. Next slide. This is promoting a cartogram based on country level data set, which is not a typical methodology used in the UN, but wanted to be out of box to show that example. Next slide. This is an example of a proportionated symbol map. But as you have seen in all these 4 SDG separators, we have used different infographics to highlight the statistical information. Next slide. One of the most valuable experience and outcome of this project is the fact that this publication was not means to an end, but a means of another start to this journey. This schematic diagram prepared by the Professor Menoyan Clark shows the ambition of the editors that this is only a start of our journey. We would therefore invite you to join this journey of the mapping for sustainable world. Thank you very much.
And if I could just add, Kyung-Soo, sorry, the book, the availability of the book has been put into the chat. So IACO has put in the availability of the book as an ebook, and we will have printed versions of this book for different venues. One of the first being the GGIM 12 next year, and also our International Cartographic Conference later this year. So thank you.
Well, let me have a word of thank you, team trainer, and you, Kyung-Soo, for this extraordinary work. I think, as you said, Tim, it's more about actually having impact, and the impact it is already having on all these stream of work. And I think if we would have doubts, but the agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals and how these interlinks with all humanity in the different countries around the world, and the capacity for using geospatial for doing that, and you have just demonstrated how to act to actually support countries on doing it better. So a big thank you again. A word of apologies, team trainer, not to introduce you at the beginning on the session, but fantastic praise for the work done for you and then Kyung-Soo and the geographic section, the geographic unit at the YCT. Fantastic work, really. Let me give the floor now. I think we'll have some time still to have some discussion by the end. But let me give the floor now to on the Global Agroecological Zone and the initiative. And here I will call for Doug Muchone, Head of Geospatial at FAO. And I think also we'll have a colleague, Sam Libby from Esri, that will present this extraordinary work on the ground on mapping agroecological zones and the big data hand-in-hand initiative of FAO. So over to you, Doug and Sam on this topic.
Thank you very much, and I so can't wait to talk with you more. I know we've met before. First and foremost, dear Chair Alexander, I thank you for your continuous leadership, and I certainly welcome Einar and Toby. For you to know, tomorrow at 1400 to 1530 CET, I will be presenting the Advisory Group 13 on land use and land cover. I hope you can please join that. Next slide, please. Sounds like somebody's mowing in the backyard. Okay, so I don't want to belabor this. I think most of you know FAO, like active for like 60 years. And we are a very strong partner in geospatial. I would like to say just one word before I turn it over to Sam to talk about our public-private partnership on that global agroecological zoning, is that me has found the whole mechanism of UN-GGIM and UN-Geospatial to be fabulously useful. So I didn't know Alex, I didn't know Laura Pradas, I didn't know Einar, I didn't know Andreas, and we met, and now we were cooperating on sharing data. So Laura calls me, it's like, hey Doug, can you help out with desert locust in Somalia? And I'm like, sure. Next thing you know, Syria is over in my lab with Federica, and we're working on this. This is under the radar importance of the work that we do. So yes, I'm not gonna. I'm sure you know what FAO does, etc. Next. So we have all these databases: Aquastat, JUICE, Whopper, GS, ACES, etc. We do that. The important thing about UN-GGIM is that we want to reduce redundancy. There is no reason why I have to process all of this Sentinel and Landsat data when we can do it jointly. Next. So I'm really terrible at snipping. I cut this off, but this is from our Geospatial hand-in-hand initiative platform, which is really, really great. We have invested money into putting all our data online. You, of course, all know that there are conditions on this. I do not own the data from an kill country, right? I have to have their permissions and such. And this is something that I think is a very important part of what UN-Geospatial needs to do. So that I am allowed, and GGIM has been fantastic of reconciling border issues. Okay, and next I think I'd turn it over to Sam, because I really tomorrow at the land use land cover meeting. I hope you join. But this is kind of a really important launch. We've invested so much money in this, and it's an example of a public-private partnership between us and Esri. Sam.
Thanks, Doug, and hello to everyone. Good morning from Denver. So I'm going to go through just a few slides that give an overview of this GAEZ project and some of the work we did together with FAO and EASA to bring this data out and make it available to the community. This is more of a dive into a specific project than the kind of stuff we've been talking about so far today, but I think it's a good example of some patterns that are relevant to other opportunities and other projects and data sets that are out there. And I put some links in the chat that I'll reference throughout here. This is all totally public and open, so you can go and check it out after this meeting or anytime that you wish. Next slide, please. So some background on what is this GAEZ project. So this is the version 4 of this data. And this is the 4th version that's been developed in collaboration between FAO and EASA in Austria. These models around agroecological zoning, crop suitability, yield analyses, all these kind of amazing global models are really the result of 3 or more decades of development across different technologies, different contributors and investigators. And this data set was finished a few years ago and consists of several 100,000 global raster outputs. So these are raster products across the globe over landmass that show many different variables, suitability across different climate scenarios, different future timeframes, the date that you're looking at for suitability, and more than a few dozen crops that really cover many of the both cash and food important crops across the world. And this is great, but the result was really a massive folder structure of raster files that provided data of different types, whether it's classified data about land use classes or integers and floating points. And it was stored in various places across FAO and EASA, but there was such a large chunk of data, several terabytes of content, that it was available on request. People would provide it to their points of contact, but it was really not easy to investigate and work with this data yet for users and people who were interested in just kind of experimenting with it and seeing what was in there. And we wanted to make sure that users had guidance about what is this data, how was it generated, what are the methods that were used to get to it, as well as easy access to download and use it for their own analyses or their own research. Next slide, please. There are 6 themes across the GAEZ v4 dataset, starting with kind of the background land and water resources that exist today in global format, and then looking at the different kind of climatic contributions from temperature and precipitation to elevation or land characteristics like slope. And that results in several other themes of output analysis. Things like, what is the potential yield based purely on the climatic changes over the next 50 years? What is the suitability of certain crops in different climate scenarios? What are the reported actual yields of these different crops across countries in different areas? And then where are there gaps, meaning where do we see a current yield that is lower than what this analysis says the potential yield should be? And are these opportunities to make investments from the government or from the outside actors? Next slide, please. And so the approach that we took for this data set was, it's great this all exists, but people want to get their hands on it. So first, we wanted to create an open data site that would focus on providing open public access with a clear set of documentation, links to the official model docs. More importantly, for new users, the helpful guidance on how to think about these things and what feedback they could provide from the community. Over just providing an FTP site or a directory, we wanted to provide this data as web services, so it could be previewed, accessed, and downloaded or displayed for different uses. And ease of use was really important. This is a global community that acts on this data, some of whom may or may not be familiar with it, and ease of use to get to useful information is really important. You can see on the right some of the technologies we use to put this together. This is a platform hosted at FAO. There's one virtual machine that runs the software. We have one bucket for all of the images that are stored. So it's a pretty inexpensive storage model and usage model. And then we've built together with FAO and EASA the whole front end experience that gives you the documentation access and guidance of how to use the data. Next slide, please. Here's just a brief screenshot of the data viewer. This is all available at the links that I put in the chat. But the data viewer allows the users to go through these 6 different themes along the top, switch between them and see data from those different themes, to filter based on different attributes like the variable that's being shown or the crop, different time periods, different water input levels, for example, irrigated or rain-fed crops, and then different models for the climate as well. There are several different models that are included. We have different renderers that are used so you can display the data in classes or using a stretched kind of continuous color ramp. And then we provide a description and a table of the rasters that are available. And the links to download are available in pop-ups or in that table as direct links. Next slide, please. We thought it was really important to use image services for a few reasons. Image services are a RESTful web service that we've implemented in our software, very similar to a WCS OGC service. In fact, we expose those endpoints as part of this project. But what these allow users to do is kind of look into the database behind all of this that records all the metadata and all of the attributes of these rasters. They can filter and query and create their own queries if they want. We can render them using these different default renderers. And then they can either preview and visualize that data where you can zoom in and out and see your own area of interest, or export that image or the entire data set if you wish. And those image services provide a really good way to scale that across many users, but also to enable people who are using Python notebooks, different web or mobile apps that have OGC support, or different desktop GIS clients. And then we also, EASA did a bunch of work to summarize this data as well. By summary, I mean taking known geographic areas, whether they're country boundaries, admin 1 boundaries, watersheds, or regions, and doing this statistical analysis to summarize, well, what is the total crop potential for this region, or the total gap? And we provide a way to get to those different summary tables in the platform as well, which is a really useful output for some folks. Next slide, please. So going forward, we're working now actively as part of this community in the development of GAEZ version 5. We launched this in June. There's a recording of that launch event in the chat. The data is also shared through the hand-in-hand site that I've linked to in the chat as well, as services you can use to combine and compare with other data sets from FAO and others. And then in the version 5 work, the focus really is on increasing national capacity and providing these tools at a national level so that organizations can apply this analysis to their own activities. They can establish a community around that with other partners in different places. And then also a big update to this global data set using the latest available land cover, soils, et cetera, and new crops that need to be added. And with that, thank you to Doug and thank you to everybody else for the chance to present. Happy to take questions in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Chair, I'll return it to you. Thank you.
Fantastic. I cannot leave without going back to your words, Doug, on the importance, and I could see in the chat the discussion with Tristel and also Etta about the importance of interpersonal and human aspects of the interoperability, and we should never overlook how much a network can contribute to these human aspects of interpersonal contacts, and connecting the dots with people. I can tell you is much more important than all the technology. So it has been part of discussion in the chat box I was following, but also you mentioned that Doug, so much as important and impactful as everything rest that we do. But let me highlight one or two big points. You've made the transformation paradigm, Doug, when you said that we need to avoid duplication and we need make sure that we have coordination, coherence to avoid duplication. But you also mentioned the partnerships and the scalability, because it's not possible to scale up to our levels without partnerships and public-private partnerships. And the fact that Esri and Sam Libby is presenting with you this innovative platform is a good example. Without further ado, but I wanted to highlight these important aspects of our work: the interpersonal human aspects, the avoidance of redundancy, and scaling up through partnerships. It's part of our day-to-day work. Without further ado, let me introduce now and call for the floor to Ravi Krishnan from WHO, the head of Geospatial at WHO, and he's going to move tweak the needle to something that has been happening with all of us, which is this internexus between geospatial and health, and in fact how we can use geospatial to respond to the humanitarian crisis, and in the future how we can build this working group on geospatial and health. So over to you, Ravi.
Thank you, Alex. That was a great presentation by Sam and Doug. I really enjoyed it. My name is Ravi Shankar and I lead the WHO GIS Center for Health. It's an entity which was recently formed last year. And we are going to talk on two aspects. One is on the book which is going to be published. Actually, it's going to be an event in November. Might be Guillaume and others would talk more on that. That there'll be this will be published. Our Director General and others will be involved in that event. And the second aspect is on the working group. Paul, can we move to the next slide, Paul? Yeah, I would not be able to do justice if I'm going to talk. I'm going to say that we are going to cover this in this 10 minutes. I'll just tell the magnitude. You guys might have already sensed it. There are more than 200 million confirmed cases. So imagine a scenario. More than 220 countries, irrespective of member states or non-member states, they're all reporting on a regular basis, from the local level to the state, to the national, to the sub-region, to the region, to the global level. So this is what is happening. 3 times updating on a daily basis, volume of cases coming with huge amount of information regarding the patient data, about the name, the age, sex, gender, the location. There's a huge indicator, almost like 200 variables which are updated on a daily basis, and then the data has to go into the public domain. And that is the product which we are seeing in front of us, is the public dashboard, which is the culmination of all the work by the entire emergency team. And I was seconded there for a year. It was a huge task. An army of people actually got involved in building this up. Next slide, please. Also, I did mention about the rich amount of information which is involved. So it is not only just the case, the data which is associated with the case, the age, the gender, the place where they got admitted or what type of infection. There's so many things which is there, which will be very helpful for so many researchers and people in the near future to do more evaluation and discussions and to understand the disease more and the patterns more. I think geospatial played an important role in this, the whole management, the senior management and the Director General. Everybody realized that, and they were very supportive on these efforts. Next slide, please. So this is on the response side. The next part is on the recovery. So there was an opportunity for us to get involved on the recovery side, because the COVAX, the ACT Accelerator, you might have heard about, WHO, Gavi, and CEPI, and big players, UNICEF and big players were involved in distributing the vaccines to the countries. Of course, there's a big challenge in that, right? We have recently also my Director General said that, like, 1 in 16 of the person in if 16 people get in the Western world, 1 person gets the vaccine in underdeveloping or developing countries, especially in Africa. So that is the equitable question which came in front of us. So we formed a joint working group, and with the co-partners, World Bank, Gavi, UNICEF, WHO, and Global Fund. So we brought all the technical partners, almost more than 40-50 partners, to work on this one question. Is there an equitable distribution of vaccines to everybody? Even if the vaccines are going to reach these developing countries, who's going to get the vaccine first in the countries? Of course, I don't have to tell that, right? So how do we answer this question of is there an equitable distribution for these vaccines? One of the key factors there is to know the location of the facilities and other associated information with that. Next slide, please, Paul. Yeah, we scratched this conceptual framework, and some of my colleagues who were on this call also were involved very much in this, where three parameters. One is the spatial population, where people live, and the location of the facilities where you can administer a vaccine, and then the distance or the travel time to reach to this. It can happen in three ways, right? One, either you can go to the health facility, or people can reach from the health facility to here. Even that is happening in cases where there's elderly people or a special population that's happening. The third one is also you want to set up mobile locations where you can administer vaccine through that. So to answer those three things, this is what is actually needed. You bring all these three data sets together and you start working on that. Next slide, please. Yeah, the whole project is on these 5 or 6 things: satellite imagery, travel time, spatial population, health facilities, and catchment boundaries. Catchment boundaries are the boundaries which a health facility could potentially cover within a reasonable distance for people to reach it. Next slide, please. So finally, what are we trying to achieve there? Through all these technical partners and other entities, we are trying to support the member states to be able to do this analyticals by themselves. So to have the travel time and the population which are in various zones within the travel time is what is the objective. But it looks trivial here, but actually I'm telling the whole project which we worked through Gavi and Global Fund. We are still working on that. Is it's going to be almost close to $50 million or $100 million. In that scale is what we are saying. Gavi and Global Fund are we are very thankful for them that they are willing to fund this to every member state. So member states request funding for the GIS. This is the first time which is happening after the efforts on polio on the health area, where there's a huge amount of money is being distributed to the member states to work on the aspects of GIS. So the member states have the ability to tell now that, hey, I want to collect all my health facilities. They will get the funding for that. I want to do the travel time. I wanted to have a satellite imagery. I wanted to have a footprint. It is a huge opportunity for them to work on this. So this, we see this as a start. COVID is a real opportunity for us to get into the bigger aspects of routine immunization and other diseases which is in the horizon and in our radar. Next slide, please. So moving forward from that work on the book, which is going to be published, I also a little bit 2 slides. I wanted to talk about the WHO GIS Center. This formed in last August, where definitely WHO felt there is a big need for a GIS as an entity within the organization, and thanks to our senior management, so we started this center, and now we have serving more than 20-25 programs within the organization, and also at 3 levels of the organization supporting the member states. Next slide, please. So I also thought we'll take the opportunity to show the team which is actually involved on the back end, which is doing this work. This is the team which some of them are in the call, who's with huge expertise and value they bring to the program. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think it was very timely that the UN-GGIM came up with this blueprint. It was very good for us. Actually, we should be very thankful for Guillaume and others to bring this. That's the time when we actually joined this working group. We actually took that as a guideline for us. So we wanted to set up a GIS center. Where do we start from? So there's a beautiful blueprint document there available. From that, we took certain aspects and thought, okay, this should be our guiding factors. We got as a 3 work streams. One, we focused on tools and technology, technical exchange and partnership. That's the reason why we are here. And the third one is technical support and capacity building for the member states. Okay, we took these 3 work streams, and we are our objective is the 3 billion, covering the 3 billion. You guys might have already known that the target of WHO to cover 3 billion people globally in the area of health. Next slide, please. One aspect I want to talk about this, which will be very relevant for us moving forward, is on the health facility database. There is the database for administrative boundaries, SALB and things. So the question here is, does the, let's imagine that health facility database as a global good product. Having one database at the global level from all the 194 countries, from the health facilities to the pharmacies to the private and public, everything there, now put that in one place for the for people to do analyticals. WHO is talking a lot about the universal health coverage. So universal health coverage means everybody has access to the health facilities. If we cannot have that basic parameter on the location of health facility, I think we are going to fail in a lot of places. Even today we are talking, we're doing an interview with one of the with one of my colleagues, the person from Germany. She's a researcher and a PhD student. She said that, oh, it is fantastic that you guys are working on this. I was working on this for Germany, doing my research and things. Even in the public domain, we found only 20% of the health facilities available for Germany. She's talking about OSM and other places which is available. So that is the if that is the thing for the developed countries, imagine the countries which we are working about. Next slide, please. Guillaume, I'm thankful to the organizers for allowing us a space to discuss about geospatial and health. So there's going to be a task team or a working group which we are going to start very soon. So we are going to have the first exploratory discussion very soon in late September or so, where we'll invite all of you guys to discuss on 2 things. One is on the governance, policy issues, data standards, and consultation discussions on that related to health and geospatial. And we'll work on 2 main databases or data, which is on health facility and health catchment areas. Next slide, please. Talking about the health facilities, this is the first place where we wanted to brainstorm in the working group, and we wanted to make progress on that with 4 questions in mind. When we thought about this, what is that actually we would like the group to address us? The question, first one is, what are the challenges in building a global health facility database? Is there any challenge in that? Are member states willing to give it for open it? Or what is the privacy concerns in that? Is that a security concern for opening all the locations of the health facilities? Could be there, right? There could be a lot of challenges. So if that is so, how do we handle those privacy concerns? All these things can be discussed, and the group can actually help us to move forward on that. Next one is the minimum parameters. I know there's so many people who are collecting the health facility databases here, there, but what is the minimum global good we need? Is it the location? Is it the name? Is it the type of the health facility? Is it the status of health facility? That's what I put there. Is that the minimum thing need, or we needed more than that? I think we let that group to discuss and come up answers for that. And next on the taxonomy and hierarchy, the levels of how do we do the normal. If I say a clinic and somebody is saying different thing, we're not going to invent this, that. We're not going to be the first person who are working on this and the last people. There's been a lot of work on this. So we'll little bit clean up and come up on that. And finally, on the governance mechanism, how do we actually update this? It is, I don't think it is for us to go and collect these data sets, right? There are a lot of people who are collecting that, but how do we make sure that there is this governance mechanism to have a sustainable health facility database for global good? Thank you. I stop here.
Thank you so much, Ravi, for bringing these. I think with your last slide, we could easily understand how challenging will be the work of these the task group and the working group on geospatial health, and there's there's an urgent need for pooling resources for this humanitarian challenge, I think. So Ravi, thanks very much also for outlining the publication on Geospatial for Humanity. It's still under the final design preparation, but the colleagues in the sector in particular have been fantastic in bringing these to the final shape as well. I'd like to thank again Guido, Mark, Ayako, all the other colleagues in the Secretariat that have been made this possible. So these should be our UN Geospatial Network publication that demonstrates action from our side in terms of prevention, response, and recovery from the pandemic. Without further ado, let me introduce and first have a word of praise Einar Brogo, the director of UNITA, and my first word is really to welcome you, Einar, as a big leader in geospatial. It's great for you to be in the leadership of the UN Geospatial Network, and definitely to join the steering committee, all of us, in driving this area. Today you're going to present on the expertise of UNITAR, but we think that this is the cornerstone of our work in the coming years. Not only the use of the satellite imagery on a more wide scope, but also the capacity development for countries and for people to actually use the geospatial. So over to you, Einar, and a big praise to you joining the leadership of the UN Geospatial Network. Over to you, Einar.
No, thank you so much, Alex, and it's a great pleasure for me to be able to join this excellent group of colleagues. I'm very motivated and really looking forward to working with you. Also want to congratulate Ravi for this great success in setting up the new unit. Can I have the next slide, please? So just to jump straight into it, in terms of the humanitarian rapid mapping that we do. So this is a support that UNOSAT, the UN Satellite Center, is providing to member states as well as organizations working in the humanitarian domain. Some of you may know it, but I want to really highlight that this is a service that is freely available, and we are here to support during major events. Also, what you see from this slide here, if you look at some of the infrastructure data that we need. So I also want to highlight that it's really important to have, as also was mentioned earlier, to have various data sets that we can draw upon from each other within the UN and also within member states. So, for example, looking at roads and features and vulnerable population, having information about where people live, what is the risks, for example, in the areas that they live. This is really important information that we need to make sure to leverage. So when we get requests, typically from OCHA or from member states, we are basically triggering our rapid mapping mechanism. So what you get out of that in terms of product is satellite imagery analysis, but also more and more reports, statistics, data that we also share on the humanitarian data exchange. And also increasingly we do what we call web maps or live maps, where we have always the latest information. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just a little bit of statistics from the last 2.5 years. So what we've been doing, 409 products and 102 activations. So this is a service that is very much, I would say, in demand. And we are also coordinating, of course, with our good colleagues at the UNOSA in having member states access this type of imagery and analysis. Next one, please. Next one is a video, if you can start it. Great. So just to show you a bit how it works. So there's typically an emergency happening somewhere, and they are contacting us at UNOSAT. We have different ways of doing that. We have a 24/7 on-call service, but also you can, of course, write an email to the emergency mapping. We are then tasking the imagery from various sources. So these sources can be from commercial providers. We work very closely with the International Charter on Space and Major Disasters, and also, of course, a lot with open source imagery. We are very fortunate because we have our IT infrastructure hosted at CERN here in Geneva. And our colleagues are then downloading the imagery, making the various products, and providing this out to the people who ask for it, of course, but also more widely available. So that is a bit how we work. If I may have the next slide. So this is just to show you, that we are. This is a real and operational service. And this is some analysis we did very recently from the recent earthquake in Haiti. If you can put the next slide on, just to exactly, thank you. So you can see there in the level of details that we are working on. So each and every shelter and every house is being coordinating quite closely also with the Copernicus mapping service, and we have the GDAC satellite mapping coordination system that is helping us to do so. So basically showing that we are able to really, I would say, work very, very fast when a disaster strikes. I often get the question, how fast can you get the imagery? Well, this is something that is increasing a lot these days. Before it was, a couple of days, and now it's really, I would say, in really emergency situations, it's within 24 hours. For this earthquake, imagery were available very, very fast, and we can then analyze them relatively quickly. Next one, please. It doesn't switch on mine.
It is showing the flood AI mapping.
Okay, slide. Then okay, fine. Thank you. So yes, in terms of the flooding, flooding is by far the most important hazard that we are mapping. So we typically get a lot of requests on this. About half or so of our activations are related to flooding. So that's why we thought, how can we make this more operational? How can we continue supporting our colleagues and also the resident coordinator system and of course the national offices that deals with this type of disasters. So we have been, if you take the next slide, we have been working with various actors on this to see how we can develop more automatic ways of doing it. So we are basically, we have, obviously we're quite fortunate at UNOSAT because we have a very experienced image analysts that have been working with floods for a long, long time. And we're able to now make this operational. And to do so, in order to have good results, you need to have good training data sets to do so. And also to work very closely with the member states and other organizations to understand, what kind of information do they need. So once we have that mapped out, which we have, then we're able to relatively fast provide this kind of dashboards so that we can then have automatically information about the flooded areas, how many hectares are flooded within a specific province, how many people live within that affected areas, how many roads, etc., are flooded and where are they. So all these statistics is then being automatically generated. Can I have the next slide? So moving on to capacity development, which is about, I would say, 50% of what we do at UNOSAT. So since 2001, we have recorded 161 events. Sorry, since 2010. Over 5,400 people have been trained. And so in the way we do this, it's basically that we are really looking with seeing with the countries what is actually needed. So we spend quite a bit of time doing what we call an assessment before, so that we have lots of information about what they actually need. Now, this has also changed, I would say, over the years, because many countries have no longer a specific need to learn how to analyze satellite imagery. What they need is the information that is automatically derived from the imagery. So there are many services out there now that can actually provide this very simple to member states, and see how, if you're in Ministry of Economy, for example, you may have a climate change proposal that you want to submit. In order to do so, you need very good information. You need evidence-based information in order to convince the donors. And that is something that we are also working on through a project called Common Sensing out in the Pacific, financed by the UK Space Agency. So just to say that there are many ways of doing this. And of course, we have a mix also of training facilities. We typically go to the countries and train face-to-face. Of course, during COVID, this has had to change. This has changed quite a bit. So now we do more and more online. What we call also blended learning is another way of even. We are fortunate in many places. We have local staff that sits with the government, and we're able to still organize trainings physically, but through, I would say, remote learning. So that is one thing that actually works fairly well, I have to say. And another aspect, of course, is the fully online training, where people can do their own, what we call self-paced training. May I have the next slide? So just as an example of what we are doing in terms of training and capacity development, this is a training that we took on in Fiji, and we basically trained many people from different line ministries, but also including the NDMO office, the National Disaster Management Office. And we were able to show them how we could set up various data feeds into their existing system, which is important. So that basically, they're able to set up a live dashboard showing the results from multiple assessments, including remote assessment, but also their own assessments from the ground, and being able to combine this information has been very successful. So that when you look at capacity development, and I'm very glad that so many people are now focusing on this, we are very happy to also share our best practices for those who are interested in that, but also seeing how we can really help countries now become, I would say, more independent in the way that they are making use of geospatial information. But of course, also being there with them, because you don't develop capacity, through a 1-week training course. You have to be very continuous in your approach. So that is something that we are really focusing on, and in doing so, we're also having what we call a technical backstopping, and we're able to support the countries also with that, because very often maybe it's a data set that they need access to. They have some specific needs, and we're able to provide that to them through this technical backstopping. Another element I would say is also that is important in terms of training and capacity development is also informing senior decision makers, because unless the senior decision makers actually are well aware of what exists, then this information has very limited use. So it is really important to continue and also inform the more senior government, I would say, policymakers in the countries. So with that, I just want to really thank you for this opportunity to present, and I'm really looking forward to being able to continue to this important work. Yes, if you have any questions, the next slide will show you where you can go, and you can see the email there. So again, thank you so much, and happy to take any questions later on. Thank you.
Brilliant, Einar, because you brought right from the start not only the the important availability of common resources such as the satellite imagery and analysis that is available at a global scale, but to everyone and for free, and which sometimes we overlook in every different kind of work that different agencies is doing without paying attention for these common resources and high value resources. But I think you also point to to all of us the attention to the importance of the user perspective and the user needs and the lessons learned from the users when they're using all these things. And I think sometimes we overlook that the lessons learned from the users as they go along in all these different projects, different localities, is a key lesson for us, and it can save us tremendous resources in different projects. It's brilliant. So so thank you for the excellent presentation, Einar. Let me give the floor now to Álvaro Monet. Álvaro is with technical advisor for ECLAC, and he will bring us another perspective, which is actually all the work we do it for a major stakeholder, the countries, and for development in the regions, and for the ground, for the impact on the ground. So over to you, Álvaro, to bring us this perspective on the geospatial management in the Americas. Over to you.
Okay, Alexander, thank you. I'm not Álvaro Monet, I'm sorry. I'm presenting here on behalf of Álvaro. Well, my name is Horacio Castellaro from UN-ECLAC, the UN Economic Commission of Latin America and the Caribbean, based in Santiago de Chile. And I will present on behalf of Álvaro Monet, who couldn't attend this event. ECLAC has several capability building projects related to statistical information management. We usually work with national statistical offices, but in the last years we have incorporated the geospatial dimension on the statistical data according to the approach of integration of statistical and geospatial data deployed by UN and the other initiative as UN-GGIM. And we are closer to national spatial data infrastructure. So nowadays, we have several capability building projects that include the geospatial information management. With this project, we want to improve access to geostatistical data produced by national statistical offices and facilitate the integration with other layers and geospatial information generated by public actors and non-governmental sectors at the country level to better support decision making and policies. Next, please. Okay, I think you recognize this picture is the GSGF, the Global Statistical Geospatial Framework. It is a high-level framework which facilitates consistent production and integration approach for geostatistical information. The GF come up with these 5 steps. Use of fundamental geospatial infrastructure and geocode unit record data in a data management environment, common geography for the dissemination of statistical and geospatial interoperability, and accessible and usable information. Well, we have two capability building projects here. In one hand, we have development account 13. It helps target countries to build capabilities for the adoption of GSGF. It's like methodological and conceptual. In the other hand, we have facility project. We are going to focus on facility project. It approach to make statistical information accessible and usable. In this case, we work with the national statistical offices for the deployment of a national statistical geoportal. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, we will focus on facility project. The facility project is a collaboration of the European Union with the Latin American region through ECLAC. Facility expected outcome is a technological platform for national statistical office to integrate the data from across a range of sources based on the location and ensure its integration with other geospatial information. Next slide, please. So the beneficiaries of the project are national statistical offices for Latin America and the Caribbean countries that have initiated the process to integrate statistical and geospatial information. We have these countries now: Paraguay, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Argentina, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Costa Rica. Some requirements should be considered regarding institutional framework, data, human resources, and technologies. These are the aspects we took care to choose these target countries. Please, next slide. So there are several aspects of this project. Like we are going to use open source software. The solution will be for desktop and mobile devices, and it will allow open data. It will provide open data to the community. I will focus on why are we going to use open source software. It is very important for this project for several aspects. The native use of open standard in this technology, the interoperability is fundamental on this project because we need to adapt to pre-existing technology hosted in the National Statistical Office. So the open access to the code is very important because we need to customize the available software. Open source is more innovative and dynamic evolution for software solution. Of course, the cost of licenses, both for acquisition and maintenance. We don't want this aspect to generate a gap between countries of the region, and we care for the sustainability of the project. ECLAC and each country is able to share the improvement of a tool, and all the international geospatial community benefits of its improvement. At the end of the project, all the source code will be available in an open repository for everyone. And we are taking good practices from UN-GGIM network, for example, for vector type servers, among others solutions they are recommending. Next, please. We are inspiring in the new CEPAL-STAT interface. I don't know if you know this product. CEPAL-STAT is like a statistical gateway of Latin America and the Caribbean region. All the national indicators are presented in this site. Please, let's go to the next one. There are several contents on this new platform, like regional thematic profiles, country profiles on several thematics like economy, environmental, energy, gender, and statistical visualization of several indicators. Please, let's move to the next one. There are we are going to release a new version of this portal with new functionality, like a tabulator for custom species download, the dashboard that presents all the resources related to each indicator, and of course the new GeoPortal with several tools. We are not going to detail the tools because everybody knows what is a GeoPortal, but the most important aspect is the deployment of customized indicators, statistical indicators on the GeoPortal, and the possibility of include several external layers from, for example, other UN agencies and the national spatial infrastructure. So let's remember why we do highlight the deployment of a statistical geoportal as a capability building process. Well, that's because if we want to build a statistical geoportal, before we have to work on common geography with the National Geospatial Agency, the geocoding, and the integration on geospatial and statistical data and other processes. So it's like the statistical geoportal is like the end of a big process of geospatial and statistical data management and integration. So that's why we present this geoportal as a capability building process. Please let's move to the next one. So finally, I will talk about these three projects, these three capability building projects. We just mentioned a feasibility with the expected outcome is the implementation of statistical visualization technology platform in accordance with interoperability standards and supporting integration. But we have a development account 13 with the expected outcome is the capacity building of the implementation of the global geospatial statistical framework, another standard and methodology that facilitate integration and interoperability. And finally, the development account 12, the expected outcome is to establish an accessible statistical and geospatial database that allows to prevent and respond efficiently and resiliently to a disaster. This is focused on Caribbean countries, and in special in Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Dominicana, and Suriname. I think that is all. Thank you. I think we go back to Alexander. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Horacio Castellaro, and apologies for overlooking the fact that Alvaro was being represented by you, and you were representing Alvaro in the meeting. So it's always myself to blame for that. But thank you so much. I really appreciated. I really enjoyed that diagram you put forward for strengthening the capacity building, and what we can learn from there. I continue to believe, just like I said about Einar, the more we use the lessons learned on the ground and with the users and the people, and the more we use the lessons learned from the regions and the countries, and that lessons learned feedback into what we are planning, the better. I think it's not an easy task, but it's something that varies on. And we could learn in your presentation. I could learn a lot about the actual implementation on the ground and in Latin America and the Caribbean. But I think the same would happen with Andre in Africa, with ESCAP and so on and so forth. So many thanks. Let me apologize for something. Due to the time constraints, we might not have in the side event time enough for a reasonable period of questions and answers. So I'll suggest that you have the contacts, and we'll make sure that we circulate all the contacts. The recording of the session will be made available. You have the contacts of all the colleagues that presented the different sections, and you can contact them. And I would I prefer to use the remaining minutes to ask Guillaume to inform you what some important activities, particularly the ones occurring next week on the UN-GGIM 11 session, but also some other activities that are ongoing and being completed, such as the publications that will be coming forward. So I'll give the floor to Guillaume to outline to you some of the 2 or 3 key actions that are happening very soon, and that may be of useful and interest for all of you. Over to you, Guillaume.
Thank you so much, Alex, for giving me the floor, and thank you so much for all the presenters for their excellent presentation. I want to thank also everyone who is attending this event for joining us today to hear about what the UN Geospatial Network is doing. And as mentioned by Alex, we will be present, of course, at the plenary session of the UN-GGIM Secretariat and also the UN Geospatial Network, which has an agenda item under the thematic networks and the regional committees. And we look forward to some contributions and statements from member states in particular on the latest activities of the network. The generic job description is available online, and I've shared this across in the chat. You can also see the publications there currently as draft, but we are hoping to finish up the publications hopefully by the end of the plenary, or if not, certainly before the end of September in their final design form. They are currently being worked on by the graphic designers from our team. So, and then we will, as mentioned by Ravi, we will be organizing an exploratory meeting on geospatial and health, and we will be inviting some key players in this arena. Feel free to contribute in through your organization, or talk about it to relevant international partners, international standards organization, and of course in your national capacities. I don't know, Alex. Oh yes, sorry. We will also have we will be organizing an event on the 18th of November on Geospatial GAEZ Day, and we will be informing further on this matter. I don't know if you want to take any questions, Alex, or you think we should close at this stage.
I'm not sure if the colleagues want to extend a bit further for 10 minutes and to take some questions and answer them, or if they prefer that we close the event and they can follow up bilaterally. So I'm available for any of the two options.
I think Alex, I will close the recording of the session, and then I think if anybody wants to stay on and ask any question to people who will be able to stay on, we can then take it offline and have some kind of corridor discussion, if we can call it that way, with people. But otherwise, I guess this side event is now to a close. And again, thank you so much for your participation to the event.
It's a